we're going to do things differently. This time we are going to bring change. This time the Davids are going to win. This time we are going to say that all of us who believe that things can be better, that things can be done differently, that we can actually make the kind of Arizona that we all believe is possible, can come together and actually make that happen. So I very much need your help. I need your help in terms of the contributions. I need your help in terms of the volunteering and the phone banking and the stuffing the envelopes and the knocking on doors and the canvassing and everything else we need. And most of all, I need you to be going out there and spreading this message. There's a few of us gathered here today relatively, but there's a lot more people out there who need to hear about what's at stake. And that's where all of you are going to come in, and that's where I'm really counting on you. So talk to your coworkers or your neighbors, your family, your friends, your enemies, whoever you have to talk to. But make sure people know that in 2010, we have the chance to change Arizona and turn our economy around forever. Thank you very much.
You mentioned about there's really nothing being done in terms of leadership planning for the future. There have been studies. I remember reading in the Arizona Republic not too far back about quite a not detailed, but a rather considerable coverage of what we might do. Also, was Michael Crow, didn't he also head up another study, which I think was by business interests? Do you have any thoughts on these plans that these people have proposed? And
yeah, absolutely. We have had a countless number of studies been done, and there are more studies about everything we have to do in terms of diversifying our economy and bringing in the jobs of the future than could fill all of the bookshelves you can imagine, and they're sitting there gathering dust. That's the problem, that we know what needs to be done, and we know what needs to be done on a bipartisan basis, right? As you said, these are business leaders, a lot of people who are traditionally Republican. Luckily, I'm getting a lot of their support in this campaign, but most of these people are usually voting for the Republican candidate. I think this is an election where, in mine, it doesn't really matter, Democrat or Republican. But they are coming together from across the state to say, here's what needs to be done, but they're not getting any action out of state government, out of our elected officials, whether it's the governor or the legislature, the state treasurer, any of these people who are supposed to be moving the ball forward. You mentioned the big study. I think I know the one you're talking about. It's called the Arizona We Want study. Mm-hmm. And it was a poll that was taken, the biggest poll ever undertaken of Arizona residents. Over 4,000 people interviewed by the Gallup organization from all across the state. And what it showed in terms of raw numbers was exactly what I've seen in the course of this campaign. Because it showed that wherever you go in the state, whether it's in rural Arizona or Phoenix or Tucson, whether it's among Democrats or Republicans or independents, there is an incredible consensus out there on what people want state government to be doing when it comes to things like our economy. They want an economic plan for our future, so we actually have a strategy going into this new century and this coming decade. They want us to be investing in renewable energy jobs and some of these jobs in the future to make sure we have them. They want to make sure we have a school system that it has both the resources as well as the reform that's needed to make sure it's actually providing a good education. Even when it comes down to not just the generalities but the specifics, people have this unanimity out there. And I have seen that in places all over the state. We did a coffee in Parker, Arizona. And a morning just like this one, the place to be in Parker, Arizona, Crossroads Cafe, we had about 25 people and a lot of the leadership of La Paz County, which is, of course, Parker is the county seat. 2 of the 3 county supervisors and the sheriff and the treasurer and the assessor and the mayor of Parker, city council people, you name it. Probably 23 of the 25 were Republican. But the conversation that we were having that morning is the exact same as the conversation all of us have been having this morning. There really isn't a dividing line when it comes to party except for in state government, because you have this incredibly fractured, incredibly partisan, incredibly ideologically driven group of people out there who are much more invested in trench warfare than they are in solving problems. And that is really the challenge that we're facing in the state, but it's also the opportunity. To say if we can get past that, we can start taking all these great ideas and all these studies and actually get them into action, because the people of Arizona are way ahead of the politicians on this one. Angela.
I've been lucky enough to hear you a couple of times now, and I'm so impressed. And one of the things that you didn't mention this morning, which I'd like to talk about a bit, we're all aware of the terrible economy here and the cuts. A group of us went down to Phoenix to complain about the parks being closed, their state parks, and you know, ideas about privatizing the parks and so on. All this very, very scary stuff that's coming out. Education, huge, and I know we're going to be hearing the Superintendent of Education coming and telling us the plans there. But what intrigued me with what you was talking about was there's so much money, revenues out there that we're not collecting, and that's part and parcel of the Treasurer's job.
Right.
That in fact, you know, we're here bleeding, and yet there's monies out there that we just not even getting because we don't have we've cut so much that we can't collect them.
In case people didn't hear the question, it's about the revenues out there we're not collecting. We're talking about these tax cuts being put, unfortunately, the way it's being planned on middle-class families, working-class families. You know, the current governor and legislature have cut, we as a state, one of the things that they did was cut in a big way the Arizona Department of Revenue. And to save a small amount of money, they cut over 200 tax collectors and tax assessors. People whose job it was to make sure that big corporations and others in the state are paying what they're supposed to be paying. Because of that, in order to save a few $1 million, we've lost hundreds of millions of dollars that should have been coming into the state. Not according to me, this is according to Jan Brewer's own head of the Department of Revenue. And so now they're trying to, after I and others have been beating this drum for more than a year now, they are now in the legislature trying to catch up to that and solve some of that problem. But again, that's after pushing us into this situation, and what they're doing is not just too late, but also far too little to catch up with the problem that they created. That's one of the examples of the kind of short-term thinking we've seen that leads to this budget mess. You know, think about the decision to, you're talking about closing the state parks. That's one of these things that really hurts us. State parks is an enormous job engine for rural Arizona. And a lot of places in rural Arizona, as all of us here know, really are anchored by those state parks. They create jobs for people who live around there. They attract tourism dollars and other dollars to areas that really need that kind of fund. And so that really hurts us there as well. You know, another area is the sale of our state buildings. I had always heard that the legislature was for sale to the highest bidder. I just never actually believed it was literally true. But we've seen them make a one-time sale with a one-time cash infusion, didn't use that money to invest in the future or to build new jobs or to do any of the kinds of things we need to do to get our economy out of the basement and start moving up again like all these other states around us are already doing. And in exchange for that, we are, starting a couple of years from now, going to be paying out $60 or so million a year, every single year, for decades to come. Now that is, again, that's not a Democratic point, that's not a Republican point, that's basic fiscal irresponsibility. Dean was talking about spending like drunken sailors, and what we've seen in Washington is magnified here in Arizona. And that's why I believe that whether it's, again, Democrats or Republicans, people are going to come together and say, look, we can't keep on doing what we're doing here in this state. We can't keep on driving ourselves into a hole in terms of budget. We can't keep on failing to do the kinds of things we actually expect government to do right. And we can't keep on having the same small group of folks in the state legislature, in state government, really playing this insider game at the expense of the state's people and the state's future.
I interviewed Dean Martin in the role as a reporter in 2006, and he was real proud of investing overnight, doing, I don't know what market you call that, but he would take hundreds of millions of dollars and loan it to Spain,